It's the North Face, sponsoring Climbing Gold this year. Alex, what is your action suit?
Well, my action suit, actually, when I'm at home, I think of it as my outdoor clothes because I actually do everything in either outdoor clothes or indoor clothes. And so my outdoor clothes are the super dirty outdoor, the synthetic layers, the fleeces, the puffies, the pants. I think I took this from Mark Twight maybe, but I think I do often think of it as my action suit. You're like, oh, this is the suit you put on to go outdoors. I mean, and particularly on expeditions like Antarctica, where you literally can't leave your tent without your action suit on because the conditions are so extreme that, like, you can't even get out of bed without putting on all the layers and the correct layers with the wicking bottoms and the mid layer and the outer layer and the waterproof layer. That's like, in the most extreme environments, you do really have to wear the suit. It's like going to space. Like even when I'm doing casual climbing at home, I'm sort of like, oh, you may as well have the warmest thing, the lightest thing. And so I'm basically always using Summit Series, which is athlete tested, expedition proven. Whatever you practice in is what you want to perform in. If you're doing scary climbing all the time in a particular pair of pants, a particular jacket, you know that they fit, you know how they move, like that's what you're going to wear for the extreme things as well. The North Face has you covered. Find your action suit at thenorthface.com.
That feeling of linking turns on a 53, 56 degree face with like 3 inches of snow on top of blue ice and over huge exposure. That's what I'm searching for. Like the climbing is just to get up there so that I can ski back down.
Alex, so I've got this video I want to show you. I know this is a podcast about climbing, but we'll get there. I'll be curious, have you ever seen this clip before?
I don't think so. Let's see. Okay, I'm opening YouTube. Gotta skip the ad, of course. I'm making it full screen. Best ski line of 2014. Oh, wow. That's a heck of a line. Oh, wow. That is like the narrowest chute I've ever seen. What mountain is this? This is the craziest ski line.
I actually want to play the clip of Cody Townsend explaining his headspace on this line. Here it is.
When I was standing at the top of it, I was in the most like calm, zen-like focused state I think I'd ever been in my entire life. Like it was so noticeable how calm I was. The filmers and the other athletes were really nervous, and I was like, guys, like chill out, like I'm fine. When I did drop in, I was all of a sudden that flood of like, holy hell, this is actually really steep. I'm going really fast. This is really narrow, and these ski conditions are not that good. All you got to do is keep on your edges. There was a 45-degree turn at the end of it. I knew I was going to be going very fast. Didn't know exactly how big of a turn it was going to be, what the snow conditions were going to be like. I just know I had to be like right on that margin of like out of control, but still in control. And then I got spit out the bottom, and it was like the greatest kind of feeling I think I've ever felt in my life. It was like, I say at the end of it, it was the scariest thing I've ever done.
It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen for skiing.
It's so visceral.
I'm slightly surprised that only has 2.8 million views.
So there's a bunch of different versions of it. It came out right at that moment of like peak Facebook sharing. So it broke out towards the end of 2014, and tens of millions of people saw this. Cody was at the height of his freeriding career. He was getting regular parts in the annual ski films. Like, it's not dissimilar to how you were often Real Rock films. He's making a good living doing what he loves. And then this happens, and it's like all of a sudden ESPN and Good Morning America come calling. It just snowballs because...
Yeah, it's the craziest ski clip I've seen. I don't know. I was like, that looks so scary.
Yeah. I was thinking about it, and like at the end of it, when he's like just charging down the chute, it's like if you messed up and you hit the wall, it would be like driving into a wall going 70 on a motorcycle or something like that.
Yeah, death-defying.
Yeah.
But like we said, this is a climbing podcast, and he didn't climb that line. He took a heli to the top.
Yep.
But since then, Cody's entered a new chapter where he's brought climbing into his skiing to attempt one of the most audacious projects in the outdoors. He's been working on the 50.
Yeah. Cody has had to combine the skills of a seasoned alpinist with his years of free ride, big mountain skiing to climb and ride some of the most difficult lines in North America. With just a few of these 50 classic ski lines remaining, Cody sits right on the edge of completing his goal if the timing and conditions can all align.
Which honestly doesn't seem that likely, considering I feel like with each passing year, the odds of his lines coming into condition get smaller and smaller. But that said, his quest has been a journey. He's grown a lot. He's learned a lot. He's climbed a heck of a lot. You know, whether he actually finishes all 50 or not, he's basically skied the 50, which is pretty close. I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitzka Hall.
This is Climbing Gold. Hey, should we do one that this is skiing gold?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitzka Hall.
This is Skiing Gold. Do you have a normal podcast setup too, or what's your scene?
Isn't that like the kit of the modern athlete? My name's Cody Townsend. I'm from Lake Tahoe, California, and I'm a professional skier.
And so why are you on Climbing Gold?
I guess you guys wanted the worst climber in history on the show, as that's what I was get you were going for. I don't know. So.
No, we're going for an everyman climber, you know, to make all the listeners feel like really good about themselves.
Cool. Well, I'm good at doing that. I make people feel very good about themselves.
So how often do you climb? Like, what's your relationship with climbing?
I started climbing when I was very young, being in Tahoe. You know, it was pretty easy. There's a lot of like trad cragging and top roping, and then didn't do it for a very long time. Was into the typical skier sports of mountain biking in the off season, and then I kind of realized at one point I was like, wait a minute. The mountain biking here in Tahoe sucks, and I actually don't like it that much, and we have really good rock climbing, so I started going climbing again and kind of got back into it, but we had this hashtag that was like climb like a skier. You know, we don't work on our fingers, our asses and legs are huge, we're like, we fumble around, but we have fun with it, and so when it comes to actual rock climbing, you know, it was just kind of like a novelty thing to do in the off season. But when it comes to more snow climbing, that's kind of what I've gotten more into as kind of part of a profession, climbing mountains with snow on them, less about the rock.
Yes, so you're a mountain climber.
Yeah, mountain climber. That would be it. And
would you call it cutting edge alpinism?
No, definitely not. Not what I do. No, it's been this interesting realization. You know, there's these lines between alpinism and mountaineering and ski mountaineering and backcountry skier, and they're really blurry lines. I don't know how to define them, but, you know, in some of my realization over the past like 5 or 6 years is like, I'm still a skier at heart. And as I've gotten more into climbing for your own lines, going for more mountaineering style lines, or even, you know, shades of ski alpinism or whatnot, I've realized it's like, I really enjoy the up, but it ultimately for me is still about the down.
That's the fundamental thing that makes you a skier and not a climber, because I generally prefer going up, and then the downhill is like a survival experience.
Exactly. And that's the opposite. I'm like, I'm just trying to figure out how to get up this thing so I could get back down and enjoy myself. You know, we were on a mountain last year, and it was really bad conditions, and we were going to have this like really very, very long, huge descent. We were facing this choice because we looked at this mountain, and there was this one face that was about 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet, and it was just pure ice. And we were looking at it, we're like, we're just going to have to down climb that entire thing with skis on our back. A lot of things were kind of going sideways on this trip and on this mountain in general. We kind of all sat there and we're all like, we're not mountaineers, like we're skiers. The thought of going to the summit is appealing, and of course you want to get to the summit, but ultimately like our goal is to,
if you don't get to ski it.
Yeah, if I don't get to ski it, then what's the point? I think Colin Haley had this really good definition, which was, if I can down climb faster than you can ski down it, then you're not ski mountaineering and you're just like scratching your way down. So for me, a lot of it is like, no, ski down in style, ski down powerfully, making linking turns, doing, you know, not just like getting down with skis on is something I aspire to.
By that definition, I don't think I've ever actually skied down any mountain.
There you go. Yeah, we all watched you do that. I don't know. I saw you make a turn. It was awesome.
Maybe one by accident. Just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But so what is the 50?
The 50 has been this project that I started in 2019. It was to try and climb and ski all of the 50 classic ski descents of North America, which is a book of the same name, and it was modeled entirely after the climbing book, which was 50 classic climbs of North America.
Yeah, is there overlap? Like is there an actual direct connection between 50 classic climbs and 50 classic ski descents? Or like, what were the metrics for choosing the classic ski descents?
Talking to the authors of the ski book, they looked exactly at the climbing book and tried to dissect like why they chose the climbing lines and then model their decisions based off of that. So like, just like in the climbing book, there is plenty of approachable ski lines. So in the climbing book, you've got like a classic would be like corrugated corner on Lover's Leap, you know?
Is that considered a 50 classic?
I think so. I believe so.
That was my very first free solo ever, basically.
There you go. So,
like,
but it's a classic. Yeah, exactly. And so the same goes for in the ski book, whereas like a Mount Shasta, that was like my first big backcountry day when I was like pretty young, you know, and it's a big climb, but it's pretty straightforward. And so it's got that kind of level of like, let's say you're kind of introductory to climbing or introductory to backcountry skiing, you aspire to that. But in the same, on the opposite end of the equation, you've got Hummingbird Ridge, which is on Mount Logan, which has never been repeated and has killed multiple people and almost killed multiple people. The same goes in the ski book, where you've got lines like Mount St. Elias, the north face of Mount Robson, and the south face of University.
The north face of Mount Robson is one of the ski descent.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really hardcore climb. Is that skiable?
Yeah, it is. Just
off the vertical part.
Just to the left of the Emperor Wall is a skiable face, but it's only been skied twice in history. So you need like a magic sort of combination of weather and snowpack to make it skiable. So it's generally maybe skiable one day every 5 years or so, and you're just like keeping your eyes out, hoping it comes together.
Yeah. So how many lines do you have left in your 50?
I got 4 of them left.
Which ones?
The 3 hardest, and then one other one that we just randomly have gotten shut down on a couple times because of weather. So
and so which are the 3 hardest? The Mount Robson.
Mount Robson, Mount St. Elias.
You may as well just say that you're skiing the Emperor face, because at least climbers know what that is. But you're like, totally. Oh my God. It's like, that's so mega.
When I tell people, I'm like, have you seen The Alpinist? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, we skied just to the left of where Marc-Andre climbed. And they're like, whoa, that's gnarly.
Yeah, you're like, imagine the craziest footage you've ever seen in a climbing film, and then you ski down it. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's pretty steep, pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of like, again, you know, those are the kind of lines, like if you can get that in good condition and skiable condition, that's like such an amazing, cool thing to do. And yes, you have to climb it and you have to be a good climber and a strong climber to get up there. But for me, that feeling of linking turns on a 53, 56 degree face with like 3 inches of snow on top of blue ice and over huge exposure, that's what I'm searching for. Like the climbing is just to get up there so that I can ski back down.
That sounds so extreme. I think I'd be kind of gripped rappelling down that, like drilling V-threads and wrapping over and over. I'd be like, oh my God, this is all pretty full on.
Well, that's the thing about climbing. For a long time, as I started to climb my own lines, I would be like on my crampons and ice axes, and it's really secure when you're on steep snow. Like, it's really hard to fall, but I'd be so nervous about it. And then you click into your skis and you're like, oh, thank God. Like, you just this sigh of relief. And you went from like a lot of spikes on your feet and 2 spikes in your hand to just 2 ski edges. But as a skier, that's so much more comforting to us. Like, to be able to have like 2 skis on your feet is just like, that's what I feel natural with.
That is like, I just can't imagine that. Like, it's just so like, oh, yeah. It's so foreign. So of the lines you have left, they only come into condition once every 5 years, you said, maybe for one of them. And even then, it's like hard to know if like the weather lines up for you to actually get a shot. Basically, I'm curious talk about how conditions affect you as a professional skier or sort of ski mountaineer, or whatever you want to call it in this case. versus, because climbers talk about conditions all the time and worry about conditions, but we're more worried about like, oh, it's just not quite humid enough to try my prod, or, it's a little too dry right now, or a little cold, or, it's all sort of like very granular, like small picture conditions. And you're kind of talking big picture conditions, like whether or not you ever even go to the mountain, like whether it snows enough to even try. Like just talk about how conditions affect your project.
Yeah, conditions are, they're absolutely everything. They can be the difference between skiable and easy and incredibly difficult and gnarly. Can be, the difference between life and death, just the way that the storm came in, being the avalanche conditions that came in, the historical conditions, the fact that, we're seeing such a degradation of snowpacks and the permanent snow starting to melt out to the point where new snow is not sticking to the blue ice underneath the neve. And, it's like, to me, I've always said this, like, in skiing, you can never have like a grading system like you can in climbing, because the variables in skiing are so wild, where a 35-degree ice gully could be way gnarlier and way more dangerous, way more difficult than a 55-degree face over 1,000 feet of exposure in perfect snow. So like the conditions truly change everything. And I'd say like the mark of a good skier is being able to adapt to conditions and being able to read conditions, read storms, and understand kind of what's going on with a snowpack in general. I think we devote more time to studying weather, studying snowpacks, and trying to forecast what the snow is going to be like that day than just about anything else that we do. It's kind of annoying. I feel like most of my life I'm staring at weather reports for all of North America on a daily basis.
Can you talk about the split couloir?
Yeah.
That might be a good example of this whole, like an illustrative example.
Yeah, so Split Couloir, that's a line off Split Peak in the east side of the Sierra Mountains. It's just over 14,000 feet, and there's this couloir that splits the mountain in half. And the couloir itself is like, it's labeled as one of the classics, and it has sort of a bad history. I lost a friend and mentor to an avalanche while climbing it to ski back down in 2011. Numerous friends that have climbed and skied it have had very, very close calls. Couloirs, they're appealing to skiers, but they're also very dangerous. I sometimes like to refer to them as the butthole of the mountain. Like everything flows through them. And when you're climbing up them, you're exposed to overhead hazard. And Split in particular has a lot of overhead hazard, being one wall is totally south facing and one wall is got like a little bit of northeast. So it gets a little bit of morning light, and then everything funnels into it. There's about a 30-foot ice climb when it's in perfect condition, and there's like 2 to 3 pitches of climbing when it's at a low tide. So for the last 5 years, I spent scouting this line and watching the conditions in this thing, because for some reason it's very not skiable very often. And I probably climbed to the base of that line 7 or 8 times before finally getting to ski it. It took years and years of walking 6,000 vertical feet up this valley to the base of it to just go look at it, because you can't see it from anywhere like on the road or anything. You have to like literally go to the base of it. But it was a frustrating and difficult line that I was actually very happy to finally ski a couple of years ago.
Well, so then how do you make that call when you've already done 6,000 feet of vertical, you've gone up into the mountains, you've like got all your gear, you've ice climbed, and then you get to the base and you're like, nah, today's not my day. I mean, I'm sort of curious how you make those risk assessments, those judgment calls, because, there's a lot of overlap with climbing, but I think, it almost seems like there's more gray area or nuance with what you're doing. It's hard to say.
There is more gray area than in rock climbing, I would say. Having climbed at a very low to mediocre level and experienced it, like the fact is, like, you aren't very worried very often in a pure rock environment about the entire line falling down on top of you at any moment.
Well, ideally, you're never worried about that. I mean, it's like, honestly, like I would suspect that anyone listening to this has never been in a situation where they're like, the whole mountain could fall on me at any moment.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like, that's so rare in climbing.
Which is pretty much what we think about every time we go out there. Snow is a dynamic environment, and it can fall down on you at any moment. So it's the number one thing we're thinking about.
So you never wonder that you're in the wrong sport?
No, sometimes I do.
Yeah, every time you hike 6,000 feet of vertical and then you don't get to go skiing and you're like, this sport's stupid.
Totally. No, I just think about sometimes about how often I'm like, wow, like weather goes into the success of my career so much more than I ever imagined. You know, relying on something inherently unreliable like a weather forecast can be like the number one difference between success and failure. When you go up there, I think like the fact is, like in our sport, much like climbing, but for different reasons, but in our sport, there's been a lot of tragedy. And when you lose friends, heroes, and mentors to this sport, and it's generally to avalanches, you definitely go into the mountains with the hair on the back of your neck standing up at all times. I would say when I go into the mountains, I'm 80% like, this is awesome, this is cool, I can't wait to do this, and 20% is completely scared and freaked out and trying to look around at every single hazard, every single like thing that could potentially kill me. And when that 20% starts growing to more than 20%, that's when you start turning around. So I think turning around is just like, it's almost ingrained in what we do. If you're not turning around, you're actually doing the sport really wrong, and it's going to catch up with you at some point.
Yeah, I kind of think that if climbers are honest with themselves, they kind of experience similar, maybe different ratio of excitement to fear. Mm-hmm. But anybody walking into the mountains always has some combination of tingly, your spider sense are like, this is amazing, but you're also like, this is totally crazy. Like, a lot of things could kill us here. And it's like, if you're not at least a little bit afraid every time you go into the mountains, it's like you're just not paying attention.
Totally. I've always said that.
Even for rock climbers.
Yeah, totally. No, if you aren't scared, like something's wrong. Like you're not paying attention if you're not scared. Totally.
I mean, I think that for climbers, a lot of people frame it, they don't want to say like, oh, I was scared going into the mountains, but they'll be like, I was very alert and I was like very attuned to the environment or whatever. But it's like, basically that's just fear. It's like you can frame it however you want, but it's like you are paying close attention because you realize that the things around you could kill you. It's a simple way to just be like, it's very scary. Like that's a fair assessment.
It is. And that's where it's like, I think grew up in the 90s and there was the no fear sticker and clothing company and whatnot. And it was like, yeah, we got no fear. And it was this like bravado machoism of like no fear. And I'm like, no way, like fear's great. It's one of the most powerful tools you can use when you're climbing up like a big face. And generally at the top, it kind of ramps up in pitch and you got to get over the cornice and whatnot. And I'm always like, I kind of forecast the fact that I'm going to use all my energy to the last 200 feet. And then it's going to get really scary, those last 200 feet. But then I just got adrenaline and I'm going to be moving so fast and so confidently and so focused through that last 200 feet. It just gives you this like surge of energy and focus to get you through.
We'll be back with more after the break.
If you could eat only one meal a day and just have it be a bar, would you do it?
Yeah, if I could eat one big bar and be done for the day and not have to eat anything else, it'd be amazing.
Do you not like other food?
No, I like food, but the hassle of buying food, cooking food, prepping, eating, and then cleaning up, I'm like, I would do away with all that and just spend my time chilling.
Yeah.
And just eat a bar. It'd be amazing. I would inject it if I could.
Does David Barr get you one step closer to that dystopian reality?
David Barr honestly does feel like it's a step in the right direction towards my beautiful dystopian world where I only eat a single thing. I think the David Bars are a totally worthy contribution to the bar space and that bars need this kind of disruption. I think it's nice to see a bar that has no added sugar, basically, and a lot of protein. Like
fill you up protein?
28 grams. I mean, I saw something on their box that their closest competitor is a piece of cod. And I was like, did you see that, the little graphic where they're showing like the ratio of like protein to
Does it
price?
Taste better than a piece of cod?
Well, totally.
Though?
I was like, I mean, it's definitely way more portable, way easier to eat while adventuring, and just kind of generally easier than taking a piece of cod with you. And they're just really tasty, so they're kind of a treat. If you'd like to try David, you can go to davidprotein.com/climbinggold. Again, that's davidprotein.com/climbinggold. And remember, if you get 4 cartons on the website, you get the 5th one free.
Are you a person that deals or have you gotten old enough that you deal with cramps at all?
I've never cramped, really. Right.
Welcome to your 40s, Alex. It's a party.
But I mean, I know young people who cramp sometimes. I just don't cramp. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't either until 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah? Okay, we'll see.
Last week, dude, I was doing a 50K. I wiped out super hard. I stood up, and then my hamstring just fully shut down 25 miles into this race. It was just mayhem. And I stopped, and I put an element into my water bottle, and I drank it, and I totally nursed it, and it worked. I got through it. I thought I was done. I thought I was totally hosed in the race. Got through it. Thanks, Element.
Dude, see, I'm just not old enough to properly appreciate it. I'm just kind of yeah, it's nice to have an electrolyte drink. It seems, it's nice sometimes. It makes big outings feel better. I'm like, oh my God, you would have DNF'd if you hadn't had your element.
That's what happens when you're 8 years older and you're Gen X and not a millennial.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, if you're exercising and you're sweating, you are losing electrolytes. And so depending on what you're doing and the intensity at which you're doing it, you have to replenish your electrolytes or else you cramp like Fitz.
LMNT is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore health through hydration and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those following keto, low-carb, whole food, or paleo diets.
Get your free LMNT sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. When you started the 50, did you think that it would take this long? Or that you'd still be working on it? Did you have any sense of the scale?
Yes and no. I mean, I think there was a bit of naivete going into it of being oh yeah, I've seen plenty of photos and stories of these lines coming into condition. But when your entire life is then focused on it and you start to realize oh yeah, that's the reason why Mount Robson has been skied twice in 30 years is that it rarely comes in. So, no.
It's in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, part of it's just got to be that nobody lives there and nobody's willing to travel that far if they're not sure that it's in, and
Yeah. You just to look at the face, you have to hike in 2 days just to go scout to see if it's okay to ski.
The summer before last, Tommy and I rode our bikes up to Alaska or whatever. We biked past Mount Robson, and I'd never seen the mountain before. And when you're biking along the highway, there are all these other medium-sized mountains around it, and then you turn this corner, and all of a sudden you're oh my God, it's so big and it's so scary. And I've seen the Alpinist, I've seen the footage of Marc-Andre Leclerc soloing it, and it's it's sick, and you're that's insane. But then seeing it in person, I was that is the scariest looking mountain I think I've ever seen. It just juts out of nowhere. And it's it looks so immense. And seeing it, I wasn't sure if I was more inspired or less inspired. Because I was on the one hand, I'm wow, that is an incredible mountain. On the other hand, I was that looks so scary. Why, it's damn. Anyway, but we only saw it for under an hour as we bicycled, just for 10 miles of the highway where you keep looking over your shoulder being God damn, that thing is big. But then it's gone again.
I had the very same experience when I came around the corner driving up there for the first time, and I think the top of the mountain was in a full cloud cap, which sometimes makes mountains feel even scarier.
More infinite.
Yeah. It just it keeps going, and I was same thing. I was oh my God, what? Why did I think about doing this? I had a similar reaction when we went to University Peak last year. We went out there in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park up in the Wrangell Mountains in Alaska. It's a 14,000 foot peak, and it's a 7,500 foot face, sustained 45 to 55 degree face, no flats, no nothing. To me, it's I think the greatest ski line in the world. It looks absolutely insane. And I'll never forget the same feeling of hiking up this glacier and kind of coming around a corner and seeing it for the first time. And when a mountain just goes 7,500 feet up of a almost feeling vertical face, it is just one of the more intimidating feelings. You're we're supposed to go up there. That is huge. So yeah.
Yeah, it's 7,000 feet. You're starting to, just climbing up that, you're man, that's a lot of ascent for one big face. You're that's going to be tiring.
Yeah, and there's no bivvying on this face. It's a one big push, and you have skis on your back, and just you go.
So actually, that raises an interesting question. You were talking about how conditions and watching the weather is the biggest challenge as a skier. But I'm curious how much fitness is factored into this. Like when you started working on the 50 and ski mountaineering like this, like climbing all these mountains, basically, were you fit for this? Like, were you able to do these types of big climbs? And how does it feel? And what kind of skills have you gained through the experience of climbing 46 of these, like doing most of the 50?
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't fit enough. Like, of course, it was ski touring and I've been on expeditions and whatnot, but just the level of fitness that it can take to do some of these bigger lines and these bigger expeditions wasn't known to me. But that was the thing when I started this. Like, I kind of said it to people. I'm like, I'm not like the most likely person to do this. Like, I was a free ride skier. I was skiing out of helicopters, skiing off snowmobiles, and traversing out the backcountry from the ski resort. I was very much focused on downhill performance, and then I got kind of caught up in just this new world of human powered kind of backcountry skiing, and so going into it, I was like, well, this is a good excuse to kind of learn along the way. And this project is going to push me to places that, I wouldn't maybe necessarily choose to do in the past or would even want to do. Like, it was like kind of a blueprint for like, well, here's 50 climbs and skis that is going to push me further than I've ever thought I could do. And so it was pretty quickly within the first year. And I was like, I was doing fine when it came to fitness. But by April, I think we'd done like 8 lines in 3 weeks, and all of them are very big and very challenging and super gnarly. And I just like absolutely crashed out. Like, I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. I was so exhausted. And so yeah, since then I've been definitely much more focused on fitness. And now I like run and cross country ski and bike just about every day.
Is this a little bit like Kevin Jorgensen going up on the Dawn Wall? It's like a very strong boulder, like a free ride skier being like, I'm going to get into big mountaineering. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is logistically and technically more difficult and just bigger and harder.
100%. Like, I've always thought, like, tried to have those comparisons. It would be like you're a high-end sport climber and then all of a sudden you go to El Capitan. Like, I know that, like, friends with Emily Harrington. I know her as such a strong climber in the gym and on competition. And I remember she said the first time she was climbing in El Capitan, she like was crying. And I felt the same sort of way. I'm like going this like super challenging performance kind of skiing. And then all of a sudden you get on a steep face in Alaska and it's just like, this is so gnarly. I'm like, I skied down this so many times, but all of a sudden doing it your own 2 feet just brings such a different level to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, when you do 7,000 feet of vert, let's say, to climb some big face, and then you're going to ski down it, I'm just kind of curious, like, how much harder is it to ski down when your legs are all already jello-y? It's like if you totally blast yourself on the hike, like, does it change your ski performance or does that matter?
No, I remember my trainer actually asked me that because I got a coach for this physical training, and he asked me, he's like, so what do we need to work on for your ski? And I'm like, no, I'm good, man. I can ski with jello leg.
Oh yeah, is that true? Because man, like when I'm totally jello-y, my skiing is obviously my skiing is terrible to begin with, but then once I'm fatigued, it's like way worse. But so you don't experience that so much?
No, not as much. I mean, of course your skiing's going to be slightly diminished, but I feel like it's so second nature to me that it's like I could ski skeletally. I can figure out ways to like transfer load to my hamstrings as opposed to my quads or whatever it is. Like, it's just like skis to me is like they're like extensions of my feet, and just you can kind of figure out ways to conserve energy on the way down. I feel like it's the same way like when I go climbing, like I get pumped out and then I just fall off. Like, you professional climbers have ways to like, oh no, I'm getting pumped, I'm gonna rest here, whereas I'm just like still gripping on super tight and just like getting myself more pumped and making myself worse. So same sort of thing. Like, we have all these like tricks and these techniques that you can, I don't know, when I almost leave out all of my energy just to get to the top, because I know like no matter what I can get back down.
That's so interesting. So you really do feel like you can just summit on empty and then just ride fumes all the way back down.
100%. Yeah, no, totally.
That's so cool. It's yeah, for me, it's definitely not like that because, it's like I have to leave a reserve or else I'm going to freaking die. It's funny hearing you talk about skiing reminds me of how I feel like soloing 5/8 hand cracks or something, where I'm like, literally no amount of fatigue could make me fall out of a 5/8 hand crack. It's like your whole skeleton is attached to the wall. It's like so chill. You're just, or like even 5/9 hand cracks. I'm like, you literally like climb a 5/9 hand crack to the moon. Just be like, oh, it's still going. My bloody nubs are still locked into the crack. It's like, but I just can't imagine feeling that confident at other sports. I'm like, wow, that's so cool that.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say is like, it's so interesting when you talk to other people from other sports. Like generally, like I look at what you do and I'm like, you're crazy. And then you look at me and you're crazy. And then I talk to my big wave surfing friends. I'm like, those guys are crazy. And we all think we're crazy, but we all actually share this thing where like, no, it's kind of like who we are. This is what we do. We do it on a daily basis. We grew up with this. It's the kind of thing where it's like so second nature. It's from the outside, people look at kind of the things that we like to do in the mountains. And again, they think we're crazy. And we're like, no, I don't feel like we're crazy. It's just this like, it's been 40 years of like slow baby steps up to this place. It's working this way, training this way, understanding every little aspect of the sport to where it just doesn't, it feels like maybe a 10% leap when you're truly doing some of that hardest stuff you've ever done, as opposed to from the outside, they just see the 0 to 100% and they think you're nuts. And yeah, we don't feel that way.
That's exactly how I've explained so much of my own stuff to folks. You're like, well, it's like when you're doing the thing all the time, you're just doing the thing. It feels totally normal.
Totally.
Do you want to talk about our experience on Whitney? I feel like for anybody listening to this, what we get to climb together / ski together / survive.
So I'm seriously wrong. Feeling really bad. Like it must be. Like I'm like the worst I've ever been.
We'll be back with more after the break. How do we get into it? What's our start? Like, Climbing Gold is brought to you by Yeti. Fitz, where is your microphone right now?
It is currently on top of a Yeti cooler inside my truck in the ski area parking lot.
Is that what Yeti coolers are best for?
No, they're actually really good for cooling.
Wait, so of the Climbing Gold team that's on this call right now, how many Yeti products are within arm's reach of both you guys?
Accidentally, there are at least 3 looking around this truck.
Yeah, I probably have at least 20 Yeti products within like a 10-foot radius of me.
It's like we're like fish that don't even notice the water that we're living in. It's like we swim in a world of Yeti.
But why?
Well, apparently because they keep things cold and everybody likes them.
And sometimes they keep things hot.
Nobody likes hot things.
Okay.
You lie.
Yeah, I guess some people like hot things. I don't like
Do you
hot
not
things.
like tea? You like tea. Come on, man.
I've literally never taken a hot drink to a crag. I'll sometimes steal a sip of Sonny's though, and she does use Yeti for it. Thanks to Yeti for supporting Climbing Gold. Check it out at yeti.com.
Alex, are you a pancake guy?
I feel like it's impossible to feel full from eating a pancake.
That's how I feel.
You have to eat
about
like 100 of
pancakes,
them,
too.
and you have to like lather them in peanut butter and stuff. And even then, you're hungry like 20 minutes later, and you're like, "What the fuck's the point?"
What if I told you there's a pancake that could take care of that issue?
There is a pancake that can take care of this issue. It's Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes. Rawr.
Tell me about Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes are delicious and nutritious, packed with protein. Breakfast at the Honnold household is often oatmeal or pancakes. The kids get up, Sonny gets all fired up, we whip something up in the kitchen, and we have something delicious and nutritious and filling for the kids.
What else does Kodiak make?
I think Kodiak Cakes are known for the pancakes, but actually I think we eat more of the oatmeal at the house. And they also make these insane little dessert nuggets that you microwave that Sonny was making, like little brownies that she makes in the microwave. They were like the ultimate treat. They're so good, it's insane. Fuel your spring and summer adventures with a quick breakfast packed with the real good stuff. 100% whole grains, protein, and a whole lot of flavor. Find Kodiak Cakes at your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on them. Learn more at kodiakcakes.com.
Did we actually end up climbing together? I don't know.
You did a little hiking and then you took a nap. I mean, that's like almost like Levitt.
Totally. Yeah. So I learned something on that trip that I am a mountain expert, perhaps not a desert expert at all. So yeah, Alex and I, to those that haven't seen the episode, we did an episode together and we were trying to ride our bikes from Death Valley to the base of Mount Whitney and then climb and ski from the summit of Mount Whitney. And
which is a cool low point to high point in the continental U.S. It's like a kind of a natural challenge that people do, which is cool because you're going from Badwater, the lowest point in the continental U.S., to the summit of Whitney, which is the highest. And it's like, what, 120-mile bike ride or something? It's like close enough. It's far enough to be rad, but close enough to be doable. So you're like, oh, it's, it's like a natural challenge.
For sure. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, 15 or 22,000 vert in total, like 135 miles. Like it's a very big day.
Yeah, but it's like totally doable. It's like, it's not crazy, but you're like, wow, that's challenging. And so it's kind of one of those perfect sweet spot challenges where you're like, oh, that's going to be hard to do, but it's possible and it makes sense.
For sure. So somehow I roped you into this.
I love that kind of stuff.
You do, for sure. And then we went down there and we were kind of setting up to do this. And I'll let the listeners know that if they watch the video, they'll see me get heat stroke and nearly die on the side of the road in Death Valley. And in hindsight, it was very comical. While it was happening, I would say it was a little nerve-wracking.
You were more stressed?
Well, I remember I was stressed because I was like watching my heart rate monitor and I was like sitting down for 25 minutes inside a air-conditioned car after I got heat stroke and my heart rate was still like 170 for just sitting. God. And I was like, okay, yeah, something's really bad. But so I got heat stroke. We continued to bike. My bike ended up breaking. I remember I sheared a pedal. So we drove to the base. We tried to hike the next day. Obviously, I wasn't in the top condition after getting heat stroke. So I didn't make it to the top, but you and Bjarne and Greg made it to the top and skied back down. You surprised some folk on the way back down. It was awesome.
All I remember is Bjarne, who's the cameraman, right? I mean, but he's also like a professional skier. He's like an incredible skier. But he was like skiing behind me or skiing in front of me, but backward with the camera, basically being like, "You're doing great, like you're gonna survive. You'll be okay." I was like, "Oh my god!" I was so gripped skiing. Bjarne's like just freaking skiing backward, filming, just being like, "This is so chill." And I was like, "This is the most extreme thing I've ever done."
Totally. Well, and I'll give some backstory too. So when we agreed to do this, I got a call and text from Jimmy Chin, and from Adrian and Emily. I forget one. And they both, like, Jimmy told me, he was like, "Whatever you do, don't kill the world's greatest soloist." And I was like, okay, that's, definitely my goal. And he's not going to die. It's chill. Like, it's an easy ski. But we were down in that area the week before. I forget, you got delayed. You couldn't be there. So Bjarne and I decided to go to the summit of Whitney and ski back down, which was my first time doing it. And it was just like, hey, let's get it done with. If anything goes sideways on the bike trip, we'll have checked off the list. And when I skied down, we found some of the worst conditions you could ever imagine, like literally punching through the snow and taking slams, like Bjarne and I. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm not going to kill Alex, but might ruin his climbing season because like he's going to blow a knee or hurt himself. So we had this plan where we were going to start like late in the afternoon to bike during the night and kind of climb and ski during the next day. Well, I was like, oh my God, we're going to really kill Alex if we do this. So we shifted up the hours a ton to then end up biking in the middle of the day. And in that process, I completely forgot about the fact that I had not been in temperatures above 40 degrees for the past 4 months. And my heat acclimatization was very, very poor. And within the first like pretty much 3 hours, I got heat stroke and then nearly killed myself in the process. So, yeah.
Something's seriously wrong. Feeling really bad. Like, it must be. Like, I'm like the worst I've ever been.
Okay.
Like,
I've got some Pedialyte in the back.
I need to get in the car. Ugh.
I'm getting kind of worried, so can you tell me how to feel?
Feel really bad. Like, really bad.
And you're also wearing all black spandex in the desert in the day, just burning.
I got a lot of shit for that online. The comments were roasting me for that.
Well, no more roasted than you got by Death Valley Sun.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in some ways that kind of speaks to the challenge of all these big mountain adventures, though, is that you can always sort of optimize your logistics for one thing or another, but you just can't have it all. You know, you're sort of like, okay, we want good snow conditions, so we want it to be like middle of the day, and it's going to take us whatever 16 hours to get there. So you work backwards 16 hours, and then you're like, so we're going to start biking at 7 a.m. But then you're like, wait, if we start biking at 7 a.m., it turns out we're going to die of heat stroke, which, you know, we discovered. But basically, it's like, you know, I think with all these like big challenges, you're always juggling like real life stuff. Like, when can we get there? And like, when is the permit office open? Like, when can we get the permit to like drive? You know, it's like, there's so many logistics that go into this. And I think YouTube comments, you know, people are like, what an idiot. And you're like, well, come on. I had to drive from town. I had to get a permit. I had to figure out the thing. I had to get some breakfast. And then I had to, you know, do 24 hours exercise. You're like, I don't know. How am I supposed to do it differently? You know, and I had to be back a day and a half later because my wife had a thing going on or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's always like real life that you're juggling, and you're kind of like, come on, like you optimize for the conditions you can, and then, you know, there's a lot of real life as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's, you know, we all make mistakes in the mountains. We all have. But I generally think, like, I'd like to think that when this is our life and this is what we focus on, like, we generally know what the F we're doing. I can say,
yeah, you try not to make mistakes when it matters. You know?
Exactly. No, there's these like sideline mistakes. Like, you don't make a mistake when it comes to trying to figure out what the snowpack is doing, seeing the probability of an avalanche coming down on top of you while you're climbing up the face. That's like the number one thing. Hey, if we focus on that.
Yeah.
So that
but mistiming your cycling adventure, you're like, whatever. You're like, that's not even my sport. You're like, who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's totally it. So
no, I feel totally the same way. And same, like for me with skiing, even the whole thing is just a fun adventure where I'm like, yeah, I can be terrible at this. I can get totally worked. Like, that's fine. This isn't even the thing that I do, you know?
Well, there's something really rad about doing sports that you're not good at. Like, I think, you know, you see a lot of professional athletes at some point within their career, especially ones that are at the top, kind of start to branch and be curious in other sports. Because in a certain way, like, there's this linear progression within the sports that we do. And that point of your life when you are young and you're just rapidly progressing. And then as time goes on and you get higher and higher level, you start to kind of like that linear progression starts to flatten a little bit.
Yeah, diminishing returns.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think quite often, like, we become interested in other sports or other variations of our own sport because of the fact that you get that kind of rapid progression again, that fun of learning. And, you know, for me, that was a big part of the 50. And why I believe like skiing is such a beautiful sport is because for 20 years I was a ski racer trying to be on, you know, the US ski team and be in the Olympics and stuff like that. And then I switched to free ride skiing. And here's an entirely different way to act within the mountains, to see the mountains. And then I did that for 10 to 15 years. And then it's like completely cast that aside. And I feel like a beginner again, getting into like ski mountaineering. And it's like, I think the mountains in general like that, climbing shares a lot of that, surfing shares a lot of these natural sports. You know, in my late 30s, I was all of a sudden feeling like I'm almost a beginner in this sport and learning the sport all over again. And it's such a like a joyous feeling to be able to have that in your sports.
Well, that's what, yeah, I mean, I think that's why climbing as well is a lifelong sport, because there's always something, a new skill you can learn, a new challenge you can take on. It's like, I mean, I think that same progression in climbing yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same. Where it's like you can be a gym boulder for 20 years and then suddenly be like, I want to learn how to big wall climb. And then you have like a whole new path.
Yeah.
It's like there's always something to work on if you're excited about it. Has your approach to the 50 changed at all with the baby?
Yeah.
And I hate to ask you because everybody asks me the same question with soloing, but it's like, but everybody wants to know. You know, it's a common question. Like, and I feel like with skiing, the risk assessment calculation is even more complex than with climbing in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of like, have you noticed that more, you know, as a parent now?
Yeah, as a parent, you get that question all the time. And early on, I definitely was like, no, it hasn't changed, because it became, for me, a goal way before I had a kid that my number one goal is to come home at the end of the day. And that was because I was losing friends, losing heroes, losing mentors. Like, we had a run here in Tahoe where it was just like, you know, there was like 10 deaths within a few years. The most prominent professional athletes in our sport were just kind of sadly dropping like flies. And it was this big awakening within our sport of like, hey, maybe we're not assessing the risks and the dangers as much as we should be. And so it became a goal for me pretty early on. It was like, okay, like your goal is to, number one goal is to don't die. And I always tell people, I'm like, it kind of sounds like, yeah, of course your goal is don't die. But like, you kind of actually have to think about it, because I think as when you're in the mountains or when you're out there doing it, or you're a driven professional athlete, you look at like a line or something, and you're like, man, it'd be so sick if I could ski down there, backflip off that 60-foot cliff, land in that like chute and ride away. And so you start thinking about that and you're like, that's doable. I can do it. But then all of a sudden you're like, what's the probability of like really dying in this? And you're like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or just even thinking about the avalanche conditions, all those things. So it became a goal. And when I had a kid, I was like, yeah, it's not going to change. My goal is to come home at the end of the day. I want to be there for my wife. I want to be there for my family. And I will say, though, that it wasn't entirely true. And what I've found is that when the risk is on the margins, when you kind of have that little bit of question, maybe that extra elevation of fear, it's a little harder to push through that. Because for 20 years, things we do are scary. You're on top and you're like, oh, I'm scared out of my mind. But you find the motivation, you find the confidence, you build off prior experiences in your own head, and you like, all right, I got this. And when it comes to those same situations now with a kid at home, sometimes it's a little bit easier, just like, why? Why would I want to try to push through this? Like, I have a responsibility now to be there for my son and for my family. And so there is...
But then do you wonder, like, could I still push through it if I had to? Because I wonder about this a lot, because there are a lot of things for me where I'm like, I think I could do that if I had a reason to, but I'm like, do I have a reason to? It's like if I want to be home for bedtime and I want to like, play with my daughter all evening, and I'm sort of like, yeah, I could probably do the rad thing if I needed to, but I just don't really feel a need to.
You've just absolutely nailed it. And that was actually an experience we had on a mountain last year where things got really gnarly. All three of us on the team, we all had a very close call at one point. We pretty much all almost died once. But before that, we were kind of pushing our way through. And I just kind of all of a sudden felt this, like, I don't have a need to get to the top of this mountain. Like, I don't have, like, it's not going to change my life. Like, it's not going to make me a noticeably better person or feel more complete. Like, I know deep within that I can go to the top of that mountain. But like, honestly, I don't need to. And it was a strangely comforting feeling.
But do you worry though that that's the beginning of middle age? Like, that's complacency? Like, that's because I'm a little like, because it's one thing to keep telling yourself like, I think I could if I had to, but I just don't want to. But then eventually you're like, wait, can I? Because if you're not consistently proving to yourself or to others that you can do something, I'm like, can you actually do it?
Yeah, well, and that's what's really hard about it. And I think when, we've wired our identities and who we are in this world and who we are in our own minds very much along this line of continually pushing through that fear, continually moving further and better and doing things harder to break that habit in sacrifice of being there for your family. Because the fact is, like, it sucks for the kids. It sucks for the community, and it sucks for the family members when their father or their mother dies in the mountains. Like, I've been witness to it around here, and there's no silver lining to it. And yeah, it's hard because you're breaking this pattern that you've built for yourself in your own mind for 20, 30 years, and you're succumbing to this way of like, no, I'm not pushing through because I need to be there for my kid. Does that end your career as a professional athlete? Does that end who you think you are? In many ways, it's like, I think the next great challenge for myself is trying to figure out where is that line and where is that balance moving forward.
What were the rules that you came up with for yourself for the 50 to sort of put guardrails on the project?
Yeah, which number one, first rule is don't die. Second rule is have fun. Third rule is ski the 50. And it was very much, those were the rules, because it was like, ultimately, like, yeah, you need to come home at the end of the day, be there for your family, be there for your community. Number two, have fun, because what the hell are we doing this for? Like, we ain't changing the world. We ain't doing things for the greater good of mankind. Like, these sports we do are inherently selfish in many ways. So I find myself to be like, make sure that it's fun, because if you're just pushing through for glory or pushing through to say I was the first ascent of this or whatever, I don't know, that doesn't do it for me. And then three, though, you do need to have big challenge. Like I think great challenge in life is what helps you grow, helps you understand who you are, helps motivate and inspire people around you and within our community. So I think those three things are inherently contradictory, but those three things are also like what's very important to me.
I find rule number 2, have fun, to be interesting, because I think I never really have even thought about this, because, obviously I like climbing. I think it's super fun. I love going climbing all the time, but definitely climbing culture has less of an emphasis on having fun than ski culture or snowboarding or whatever. I'm kind of like, I've never really thought about that, but I'm like, is climbing not as fun as some sports? You know what I mean? Like, because I think skiers celebrate, like, I'm going to have fun, like it's joyous. And in a lot of ways, skiing is more fun because it's such a thrill. It's like more of an adrenaline, you're like, I'm like zipping down the mountain. It's insane. And climbing is a little bit more of a slow burn where you're sort of like, I'm like doing this thing and it's meditative and it's beautiful and it's like, it's fun, but it's sort of more like contemplative, like slow fun and not like a thrill the way skiing is. But I don't know. I mean, as somebody who does both, what do you think? Like, do you see any cultural differences between the fun had in either sport?
Yeah, well, I think the sport of downhill skiing is just pure hedonism, and like it's just totally, about type 1 fun. Just like enjoy soft snow, flying off cliffs, and going fast.
Like ancient Romans would have loved it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just pure, ancient Greeks, they'd be like, downhill skiing, it's for us.
It's for us. But I don't say what type of fun, because type 2 fun is very much fun as well. So like, to me, that's like type 2 fun, which is more similar to climbing, I think. Like, I think generally, like, climbing is fun. Like, when you do get I don't know, you're in a cool spot, you have a good hand crack, and you all of a sudden look down and you're like, well, this is so beautiful, and I'm moving my way up this like rock face. Like, it feels really cool. So
yeah, but it's kind of like slow fun though.
It is.
You're kind of like, oh, that's cool, as opposed to like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. No, there is a slight difference in it, but I mean, maybe that's where like a lot of those climbers got into like base jumping and I don't know, the Dan Osmond style, like bungee jumping with climbing ropes. Yeah.
Yeah. They notice that
pure.
all those folks are mostly dead now, so you're kind of like, well, that's the problem with having too much fun.
Yeah. That's why it's number 2.
Yeah, totally. It makes me, I'm like, did I get into the wrong sport? I'm like, Jesus, is skiing more fun?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe not. But then no, but I look at it, but like the fact that we have to worry about the whole mountain coming down on us all the time. Like
actually, and the difference is that with skiing, I guess, that it's so fun for 6 minutes. Like if you're downhill skiing at a resort, you're like, I had so much fun for 4.5 minutes on that run. And then I sat on the lift for like 30 minutes trying to get back up the mountain or whatever. You're sort of like the ratios are all different. Whereas climbing, it's like, the hike is kind of like slow and like, oh, this is nice, not necessarily fun. And the climb is like, this is really satisfying and cool, but not like thrilling. But at least you're like having a pretty good time the whole time. Mm-hmm. You're not like, and I feel like with skiing, it's like slightly different ratios.
It is.
It's like really fun, punctuated by long periods of like sitting in a storm waiting for the weather to be good and stuff.
That's why you as a backcountry skier, you have to learn to enjoy the up in many ways, like the actual walking up the mountain, because you walk for 2 to 10 hours and you ski back down for 10 to 30 minutes. Yeah, exactly. And so the ratios are really off in ski touring, so you do have to learn to appreciate the up.
Well, I mean, as a climber, you only appreciate the up. So, because rappelling is like the worst thing in climbing.
I don't know. I find rappelling pretty fun. Like, I will say, like,
oh, I find it so scary.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of, when you're rapping to the end of on a like El Cap or something like that, it can be scary. Like, I always find it when I'm skiing, if we have a rappel that we have to do and we ski down to the edge of the cliff to rappel after, like, we're soloing in a way to get to that point. And as soon as I build an anchor and then get on the rope, it's like this really comforting feeling of like, I'm on a rope. I can do anything now.
Yeah, you're safe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that different of feeling. But then quite often we leave our skis on and we just like wrap down with our skis on and then land on, you're back on the snow. You're like, I'm not exposed anymore. This is awesome. So I have a different experience with rappelling. So yeah.
Actually, I once I climbed with Colin Haley outside Seattle on this random mountain that's near town. But my goal for the day was I'd never climbed like real climbing with skis on my back. And I was like, I want to do some climbing with skis on, and then I want to like rappel with skis. And so we like climbed this little peak, but then I had my skis in my backpack, and then we wrapped down. And I was like, this is the raddest thing I've ever done. It feels like James Bond or something, when you wrap with skis on and like all the stuff on your back, you're like, this is sick.
Totally.
So, I mean, you've been doing the 50 for 6 years, or this is year 6, and
yeah,
you say you have 4 lines left?
Yeah, 4 lines left.
Did you intentionally save the best for last, or is that like
no,
just the way it played out because conditions?
It kind of was the way it played out. I was thinking like, oh, I should try them while I'm doing this so I don't just like push them off into the end. But the fact is, like, the St. Elias, the Robson, the university, they take like 3 to 4 week expeditions. And in the meantime, I was kind of all of a sudden realizing, I was like, okay, I could go off into the middle of nowhere for 4 weeks and we come back with nothing. But in the meantime, then there's like 7 to 10 other lines I could have skied in the in-between. So it was kind of this realization of like, no, let's just like keep checking off the easy ones, the low-hanging fruit, and then we'll kind of put those out at the end. And the fact was, we were trying some of them pretty early on. Mount St. Elias, we've tried 3 times now, and it's almost killed us twice now. So we put a lot of effort into trying some of these lines, and they're very, very difficult for a reason. You just need a magic combination to come together. And then the sad fact is that I'm watching these lines just degrade with climate change every year. I have a picture of University Peak in 2019, and we went there last year. In 5 years, it's like an entirely different mountain. Like the ice has changed so much, and it's like making the lines very, very difficult. St. Elias, potentially the route we're trying to climb and ski, in the next few years, it's probably not going to be climbable anymore because the crevasses are getting so big. You're going to need like Himalayan style ladders to get across it. But you don't have any Sherpas or any porters there. So there's no chance you're going to be bringing ladders.
Would you just climb a different line though to ski down?
There's not really any.
Can you go around?
There's kind of 3 climbing lines. So one of them is actually in the 50 Classic Climbs. St. Elias is in the 50 Classic Climbs and the ski descents. But the one
cool.
in the climb is the Abruzzi route, which is no longer climbable. It is...
Because it's melted or something, or what?
Yeah, it's only been climbed like twice, and then it's melted out. The seracs have grown so big that it's unclimbable. So, that route, and then there's the Harvard route, which is the route we've been trying to do. That's quickly becoming unclimbable. And then there's one other route that is right on the borderline, but it to me is not as cool of a line. Let's put it that way. I think the Harvard route's the coolest line.
Oh, man, Tommy and I experienced that on the Devil's Thumb 2 summers ago in Alaska as well, because the pictures we had of the faces were all from like 2014 was the most recent. And then we went up there and it was almost hard to match some of the features up because the glacier had receded so much that you were like, whoa, there's these giant rock fins sticking out, separating some of the formations that like used to all just be covered in snow. So, we'd read accounts from people that like from base camp, they just sort of snow traversed around to the bottom of this thing and then climbed it. And then we look at the photo, and then we got there in real life and we're like, wait, what do you mean snow traversed around? It's like these giant rock fins and this like up and down and like all kinds of sort of like extreme, climbing and stuff. It's still doable, still fine. But you're like, man, that has changed a lot in a decade. You're just like, that is a completely different mountain.
As a skier, just a downhill skier, it's like, it's always easy to find powder. And sure, we have slightly less snowpack or shorter seasons or whatever, these things that are a little bit less imperceptible kind of to the impacts of climate change. But when all of a sudden you're doing these historical lines that have photos from 30 years ago that have ice and glaciers to them, you start to really quickly realize like these lines are changing and they're changing very fast. And, I always tell people, like, it's small potatoes. The fact that, like, oh, the 50 classic ski descents may never be skiable again because of climate change. Like, big whoop. Like, I'm sorry, it's like not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it's a bummer, but the impacts of climate change are going to be far worse.
But it is indicative of a quickly changing climate, and that's a concern.
Yeah, it's almost like the canary in the coal mine is the way I look at it. When you see these photos and you've seen 40 to 60 feet of ice loss on a snow face within a 10-year span, you're like, whoa, that is crazy, because that was
yeah, because that's like not geologic timescales. I mean, that's the thing about all this stuff is these mountains all feel permanent in a way. You're like, well, this mountain has never changed. It's so vast and immense. And then you're like, wait, in the last 5 years, it's vastly, it's just changed dramatically. Mm-hmm. And you're sort of like, that doesn't seem appropriate for the scale of the mountains. You're like, oh, like who knew that natural features could change that quickly?
Cody, I just want to jump in with a question. Listening to all this, knowing the realities of climate change's impact on the mountains, things have changed really rapidly, and knowing that already, even without that the weather window for these last few lines, the difficulty of them, if I were going to place money on this, I guess that you're probably not going to complete the 50.
Yeah, I would say the betting odds would be much better that finishing is a more unlikely outcome.
And and like that's not a reflection of the effort you've put into it. It's just the reality. Like, but I am curious, like, does that nag at you all? Like, does that feel like there's going to be an asterisk on this project when you look back?
Oh, no, it will nag at me for my whole life. But I will say, I had this before I even committed to it. I knew, I was like, the reality, the likelihood of not finishing is very high. And are you going to be comfortable for the rest of your life, people asking you, why didn't you finish? Or being comfortable with yourself that this is a quote unquote failure. And it wasn't until I kind of thought through that over months. And it got to a point where it was like, no, I just have to try. That's the most important thing to me. When it became a point where it was like, if I don't try, that's going to nag at me for the rest of my life, versus the fact that I might not finish. Now that I'm here with 4 left, then all of a sudden the nagging at you of not finishing becomes more important. But ultimately, I know that was the deal I made with myself before even trying. And so ultimately, I know I'll have given it my all. And I will, if someone else goes out there and does it, then that's awesome. I would be very, very so proud of that person, because I know what it takes. And I know that whatever it is, whether it's luck, whether it's desire, whether it's balance of family life, whether it's climate change, whatever it is that made me not finish, I know that I gave it my all and tried whatever I could do. And that was kind of the point where it was like, okay, now you can commit to wanting to do this.
Thanks, Cody, for sitting down with us and not killing our host. Climbing Gold is a production of Duct Tape and Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production and editing team includes Marco Seiler Gonzalez, Skylar Perwins, Evan Phillips, and me, Fitzka Hall. Music today by Sunshapes, Otros, and Brendan O'Connell. Our executive producers are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lisi Hendricks and Becca Cahal for Duct Tape and Beer. Thanks for listening.